Hey, y'all, this is Max Henry. Welcome back to the Takeoff, episode 21. We made it to the Blackjack episode. We got Lynn Jung on the Takeoff. And if you are unfamiliar with Lynn, which I'd be very surprised. She's one of the most prominent female parkour athletes in the scene for the past 10 to 15 years, putting together some amazing content through Storm, a video with Mel in San Francisco Bay Area called Remedy that you should absolutely check out, and competing in Red Bull Art of Motion and some other competitions. She's kind of stepped back from being so public in the training space the last year or two and has recently taken on a job in marketing with a sports agency. So, in this episode, we talk a little bit about her background helping to promote awareness and support for competitive women's parkour in the space, all the changes that she has seen with the way that women are rewarded and brought into the competitive space from 10, 15 years ago up until now. And we go into the lessons that she's learning at her new job and what she wants to take back into parkour from that. I really liked this episode, as I do with all of these, but I had not gotten the chance to catch up with Lynn in a long time. And it was really cool to hear her perspective since she has taken a small step away from the community recently. And I think she gets to see it in a little bit of a clearer way than a lot of us do who are still so in the weeds on it, particularly with the competitive issue. Since she'd done so much work on that, I was really curious to hear, where she feels like the dialogue is in the community right now regarding gender in parkour and particularly gender in competitive parkour. So without farther ado, here is Lynn Jung.
No idea what you've got planned.
I'm just curious to hear how your life is going. Do you have a pencil? Are you taking notes? You're so
No,
prepared.
I scribble. I usually do that.
Okay.
Because I just finished work, so then I still have all my stuff here, and I just got the pencil. I'm just drawing triangles.
Oh, nice. That we do a lot of shape drawing in the Henry house. We're practicing all of our shapes with Margot, so
I do not have
she'd be
a big
very
house,
excited to
so
see a bunch of triangles. That's her favorite shape. I was gonna ask, first of all, how is your ACL recovery going?
it's not so bad. It's been 2 months since surgery, so I injured myself in October, and then you have to wait quite a while to get surgery because of the
Hmm.
swelling. Some countries do operate straight away. I think Austria does it straight away, but then the recovery is not always that smooth. So I had to wait for that, and then had surgery. And the first couple of weeks were pretty bad, and I was thinking, "Oh, this recovery is not going anywhere." But actually, the last couple of weeks have been pretty good. So I should be able to jog in a month, which is
Wow.
yeah, pretty good. I mean, it's not 100% obviously, and I have I can't lift heavy. It's pretty much rehab. It's not like training, it's just rehab, but yeah, I can't complain.
Yeah. What did you hurt it on? I really love the cat cameos.
Um, I did a side flip and I injured it on the takeoff.
Ah,
So not even
classic.
landing, it's on takeoff, and I think it's because obviously I've not trained as much as I used to, and then got booked on a job. I had a lot of annual leave left and thought, I'll just do this job and it's gonna be fun. But I need to train a little bit beforehand. So 2 hours before I was meant to get on a flight, I was like, I'll just do a few flips. I knew they wanted a side flip. I don't like side flips anyway, so they'd never been nice to my knees. And then as I took off, I could just feel this horrible snap. And I was like, when I landed,
Oh,
I was like, I don't know, I've done something to my knee. Went to the hospital, got an MRI really quickly. Luckily, yeah, and full tear. Meniscus was also torn, which might have been beforehand already. So that might have been just like additional. But
yeah.
yeah, it's not a fun
Oh,
one. I know a lot of people are struggling with it, and I've never really thought about it. I never really thought what the implications are of ACL tears because I didn't think it was going to happen to me. But yeah,
yeah.
took me to get an office job to actually get an ACL tear and surgery.
Oh, they say office jobs are great for your knees and back specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I think my body's just like very slowly deteriorating. So I do still keep the gym up, obviously, but just not as much jumping. So you're not I don't have the stress on my joints and everything the way I used to,
Yeah.
which then, as Callum says, too much too soon after too little for too long.
Yeah, that is the motto of Callum Powell. It's a
Yeah.
good way to think about all the tendon stuff. Man, I'm sorry, that's such a bummer. I guess Daryl had his ACL and meniscus tear
Did he?
too in surgery. Yeah, that was his. I'm pretty sure it might have been. I might be wrong in it. It was like PCL, but I think it was ACL and meniscus that he got surgery for like 10 years ago, and doesn't
Quite
seem to be
no.
holding him back at all. Yeah.
Not at all. At the
um,
moment, it seems like it will go back to 100%, so I'm not too worried.
yeah. I'm grateful to hear that because I have a partial tear in my meniscus that I got from trail running. I started doing now that I'm closer to the mountains. We were talking about beforehand. I'm like last summer was up in the mountains every day, running, jogging, and yeah, just added like I can do a 5 to 7 miles of trail running every day with you know 500 meters plus incline every day on top of parkour, on top of lifting, and my meniscus did not like that. So it's been a sort of constant back and forth of like strengthening it, adding a little bit too much. Oh, it's sore again for a couple weeks. Strengthen it, feel that out. And I am always grateful to hear when people are like having the surgery is just such an intimidating concept. But obviously, you also know that there are so many athletes who go through it and recover. And when
Yeah,
you're,
I think if you get a good surgeon and actually do the prehab and rehab, then and you go in healthy other than your meniscus, I think then
yeah,
you should be fine. But yeah, I mean, there's always something that can go wrong, so I'm just grateful that so far it seems like it's gonna be going out. I don't wanna jinx it, obviously, so touch wood.
yeah, we'll switch over because you were talking about your desk job and offered me such a great natural transition.
Mm.
I was curious how your work at Sidley Sports is going. I saw you started that. Was it last year?
Yeah, it's pretty much been a year now.
Okay.
Really good. Don't know where to start exactly. So
Yeah. What do
I
you
don't know if you
do
even know
and what does
what I
Sidley do? Yeah.
do. Sitley is it's quite a big agency. It's creative agency, so advertising pretty much. So what I used to be doing in front of the camera, but now I'm steps removed from that and on the other side of the creative process. We're like a branch of Sitley, so we're Sitley Sport based in London, and we only do sports advertising, sports sponsorship. So it's kind of like it could be anything. Um, but it tends to be bigger projects where it's more like sponsorships. A lot of it is in football, a lot of it is bigger sports. So I just have to let Mia out because she
Yeah,
keeps meowing
go
and it
for it.
really puts me off. Uh, um, yeah, it's classic.
As always, all of the flats that you've ever had are beautifully decorated. So we get a chance to compliment the entirety of your
Thank you.
decoration
Unfortunately, it
skills.
had nothing to do with this. When I moved in, it looks like this, but I'll take the credit.
Hey, that is compared to the house projects that we've seen you do from scratch, I feel like you've earned a easy one.
Yeah, this one's very easy, literally just move in. And yeah, it's quite nice. It's an upgrade. It's definitely a lot bigger than the flat that I had before. So yeah, that's that. Um, but yeah, Mia will probably come back in within the next 2 minutes. She's like an indoor outdoor cat. She just goes onto the patio and then comes back in.
Yeah. Trango just goes outside and eats grass. And now Margot is obsessed. She will let him outside because she can open her back door now. So she'll like stretch as high as she can with her little fingers, turn the doorknob, and you say, Trango, go outside. And then she'll just watch, like, monitor him eating pieces of grass and then like pretend she would actually eat the grass with him, like go down on all fours and try to eat grass. And we finally got her to just like, all right, grass is for pretend eating. So now she just goes next to him and will like pretend to take little handfuls of grass while he's eating. It is fantastic. We have an indoor outdoor toddler and cat.
Okay. um, where was I? So yeah, so
So
I
you're
work
yeah.
at City Sport and I work as a strategist. So pretty much when a client sends a brief, I
Mhm.
would be one of the first people to read through the brief and then kind of turn that into a creative brief for the creatives. They then turned it into a campaign. That would be super simple. That would just be like a campaign thing, not the same way you can think about if, I don't know, Max Henry gets booked on a Nike job doing parkour, then the client will have send a brief to an agency and they come up with the idea and they say, oh, I think parkour would be a really great fit, I don't know, for the audience and we could do this and that. And then the creators will flash that out. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one part of it. But we tend to do a bit bigger projects where it's more brand positioning and kind of coming up with, for example, a sponsorship platform under which all the sports that a certain brand, I don't know, could be any brand, sponsors, because often they sponsor multiple sports. So then sometimes they want an overarching platform that can kind of where everything feeds into or ladders up to that, and then we do the
Mm-hmm.
strategy and just pretty much we're coming up with what we're saying and why we're saying it, and then the creatives will do all the magic that actually turns it into something people want to see.
How has your experience in front of the camera informed now your perspective? Because obviously you're probably more tied in a lot of ways to the athlete experience than many people who work on the marketing and strategy side,
Um, I thought it
or at
would
least I
translate.
imagine.
Yeah, so I thought it translate more, but I'm so far removed from that because I'm not really. If I was in production or if I was more in the
Mm-hmm.
creative process, I think that would be more helpful. But obviously, you know the industry, so I think that's what the advantage was. Is you actually I know what it's like to be on the other side. I know what's feasible and what isn't feasible. The other day, I had a look through a DAC, a creative DAC that is a project I'm not really involved in, and it involves some athletes, and I saw some ideas, so I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure if this is gonna work out." Um, an idea of what works and what doesn't work, and if you see someone do a cork on an air track, and then it's kind of like, "Oh, we could have him do or have her do this at this location," and you're like, "Oh, I don't think she or he will do that at that location because I know the movement." But that's very rare, to be honest. I think it's more just having worked in the industry so long, you know how fast paced it is. I don't know the language as well because it's quite an exclusive industry, I think, in terms of language used. When I talk to people that don't work in advertising, it's always like, oh, what is that? What do you mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helps. But in general, it's pretty much a very new field for me to be in. Um, it's quite exciting because obviously I've done parkour in front of the camera for a decade. And as exciting and fun as it is, and it is really, really fun, I don't want to say it isn't, but after 10 years, it feels like you kind of do want to switch it around a little bit and do something else. So that was kind of like
Mm-hmm.
I want to do something different, but then also I want to do something that has a little bit more longevity where I don't put my body at risk every time I work,
Yeah.
funnily enough. But yeah, I mean, I don't, even now with the ACL injury, obviously, I can work. So I just took a few days off for the surgery. But in general, I don't have to be scared that I can't pay my bills because I'm injured, because I can still obviously sit at a desk and do my job. So that's definitely the plus. Like, minus is you sit at a desk looking at a laptop for very long hours, which is, I don't think anyone enjoys that. I think that's just not, humans aren't meant to do that. 5 days a week, 9 to 5. It's
Yeah.
just not, it's not, I don't know,
Are you all
inspiring.
remote or are you hybrid, like in office sometimes?
Hybrid. So
Okay.
I was remote for a bit just because I couldn't commute, because the commute to London is obviously not around the corner. It's door to door is probably 2 hours. So I
Mm-hmm.
do that twice a week now, and then normally it's 3 times a week, which is quite nice. It's a gorgeous office in London, so it's quite nice to go in. The team is lovely. It's quite nice to have. That's another thing that is actually nice is to see the same people and work with the same people, have like be able to build a working relationship, because in parkour you always just work for a few days, um, and you don't build a connection with people other than obviously
Yeah.
the community, which is your friend. Like they're your friends, and that's obviously great. But in a work environment, it's very temporarily.
Yeah. I loved, honestly, I getting to stretch my brain. I think that parkour,
Yes.
there's like the constant like search for novelty. And it was funny because when I switched careers from being more parkour centric and coaching, to then going into like brand strategy and creative and media, it was so refreshing because it was the experience of getting to relearn all these things and challenging yourself. And it's very rare that like I go to a parkour event and I have to, yeah, like I didn't feel challenged. Like if you're going to do a performance, like I know exactly what I'm gonna do. I know what I can do. I execute it. If I'm going to coach, it's like I've done 10,000 hours of coaching. I know exactly how the class is going to run. It's not really that challenging or novel. And ironically, the desk job for me was such a novel experience, and getting to have a relationship with somebody in your work environment where it's like, you don't actually know that I even do parkour at all. And we get to talk about all these
Yeah,
other things. Like, this is so refreshing.
yeah, it's yeah, I'm out of my comfort zone a lot more than what I used to be a few years ago. Obviously, when you start parkour and you do your first jobs, you're very much outside of your comfort zone, and it's very intimidating to work in front of the
Hmm.
camera and brands. But then it becomes easy very quickly. While for this, it's a lot more challenging. Obviously, you need to use your brain a lot more. You're also working. I mean, I'm in my mid 30s. I went to uni. I'm 35, so I'm like turning 37 next week. And I went back to uni with a lot of like a bunch of young people, which I mean that's not intimidating, but it's kind of like a okay, I just have to kind of sit through this now. And it was such a good experience. It was honestly so much better than going to uni in my 20s because I knew why I was there and what I
Hmm.
wanted to do with it. And then going into an industry, obviously I look like I've worked in the industry for quite a while because I don't look 20, so then the expectations working with clients are obviously if I get on a call with a client, they don't know that I've just come from uni, that have a lot of work experience, but just not in this position. So that's quite a bit of a challenge. But it's quite fun. I mean, I've learned so much in the last year, and there's still so much to learn. But yeah, I think I pick it up, and yeah, it's quite nice to do something so different and stimulating in a more
Yeah.
intellectual way.
Yeah, I think that I'm like I wanted to ask you about that because I think we'll get into. I'm curious because you are getting to work in an agency, so you're being exposed to how so many different brands are trying to relate their story with different athletes across multiple sports and disciplines. I'm like very curious to see what your kind of narrative takeaways have been, and your kind of overall perspective on that process. But I also feel like so many of us are in this period where I'm 33. Christine turns 35 this year, and she's been my hero of a desk job for the longest time because I got to see her balancing that with still being a parkour athlete at a very high level for 10, 15 years. But so many of us are afraid of like the routine of a desk job. And then when I finally dipped my toes in there, I'm like, oh, actually, especially in a position where you're in an agency position and you're changing clients regularly and you're constantly coming up with new ideas, like it can be, depending on the job, like really fun and motivating and a lot better than working, a warehouse shift or something like moving boxes. I think a lot of parkour people are like, I want to work with my body. I'm so afraid of sitting at a desk. And then, you get the most like mind numbing, tedious job driving for Amazon versus trying to find something that is a bit more out of your comfort zone perceptually, but the execution of it has the same like hyper social, constantly like novel, challenging aspects that parkour has.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's just I mean, I don't wanna say it's just like parkour, but it's just challenges that are new each week. There's, like, new clients, new projects. Even if it's the same client, it will be a different project. The amount of I mean, I'm into sports generally, but I was very much focused on parkour and, yeah, probably sports that are not too far off parkour that I watched and followed and knew the athletes. Also, because of the jobs you do, the nature of your job is you're not
Mhm.
work in football, you get to work with, I don't know, people who do other action sports. So I know that world really well, and it's probably what interests me most. But now I have to actually be involved in all sorts of sports, mostly football, which I don't know. Well, I didn't know that much about. Having to follow it, working with Bundesliga teams, and uh, now Formula One, and it's so fun. I actually,
Yeah.
yeah, I got into sports a lot more through this job, which is yeah, it's quite interesting because also for most people, they do follow like the regular sports, like say football is in England,
Yeah.
football is the big one. You now
Football's the
actually
big one in America too, just different type.
dif different type. Although I think, well, soccer is gonna grow in, I
Yeah.
guess, this year.
It is.
Um,
Denver just got a women's team. We proudly, I'm gonna hype up Denver Summit FC. We had the, I think, highest tickets sold of any women's sporting event, professional sporting event in US history. They sold 60,000 tickets for opening day in Colorado. So yeah, Denver is a huge, particularly in women's sports, but yeah, the men's and women's soccer is super big right now in Colorado.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's only gonna grow with obviously the World Cup, coming up. Um, so now you understand cultural references a lot more. I don't know, there's like just normal conversations that people have where football comes up. I actually know
Yeah.
what's going on. Well, a few years
Do
ago,
you go
I'm
to the
like,
pub with Phil and watch football matches now
I
in
do.
Cambridge? Nice.
Or he
Does he got
comes
you playing
around.
snooker too? Okay.
Nice. He comes, yeah, he comes around, and watches football here 'cause, my boyfriend's into football as well, so they just cuddle up on the couch and watch football. Um,
I like that they cuddle up on the couch and you're just
yeah,
like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna be taking notes in case I have to work with any of these clubs. You guys have
yeah.
your beer, watch the
Mm.
match.
They have the banter because 'cause they're supporting different teams, so obviously they have the I don't know, in the US, I don't think it's as much the case as in England where people just take the piss out of, I
Yeah.
don't know, your club if they're doing badly.
Yeah.
So that's very common, which I'm not really involved in because I don't follow a team. I just don't have that allegiance to a certain team. I just watch any football and I enjoy it.
Mhm.
Sometimes I enjoy an Arsenal game, sometimes I think it's really boring, so I'm not tied to a club at all, so that I think that's a big difference. I just yeah, I watch it and analyze it and kind of I don't wanna say learn because it is obviously it's just fun, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not an
Well, when it's
I'm
your
not a
job,
hardcore fan.
you're constantly, I think it's just like constantly absorbing.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like that's the same way that I am, and why I am so curious about the work that you're doing. And it's just like, to me, I'm always, everything I see, I'm like, oh, I'm just so curious about like all of the things that are happening. I want to take in this information and sort of like store it for later in case it
yeah,
comes
I mean,
up or
and that being a strategist would be the job for you because that's pretty much what you do. You just
yeah.
absorb everything and then connect the dots, for stuff. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty much what yeah, what the job is.
What were you doing for Parkour UK before you went into this?
So I did oh god, I'm like, "Okay, that's a year ago, let's go back there."
Yeah.
I started doing, so digital support, so pretty much just running the social media stuff, and, I mean, we had lots of changes. I think I was with them for 3 years in, like, a part-time role, and then by the time I left, I had a lot more responsibility. We were pretty much doing a rebrand, but I don't wanna say, "Oh, we were doing a rebrand because that sounds massive. We had a tiny budget because obviously
Hmm.
we are we are funded by well, we Parkour UK is funded by Sport England, but money doesn't stretch very far. You have to be very frugal with it. So
Yes. I
we
remember
did
when that announcement came out and it was like 500, I don't remember the exact number, but it was like 500,000 pounds or however much
yeah,
over. And then it's over like 3 or 5 years. And I'm just thinking,
yeah,
okay, so that's two people's salary full time and nothing else. Like it sounds so much to parkour athletes. And I'm like,
yeah.
okay, if you're paying someone a
I
living
mean,
wage, you can afford two people and one part-time person.
people were
And
super
maybe that's it.
angry. Yeah, people were getting angry because they were like, "You got so much money. Where's the money going? Why is it not going?" Because I also think parkour people, and I was part of that, you don't really have an
Hmm.
idea where the money actually goes to and what
Yep.
everything costs. And the money isn't meant for parkour athletes. Like, I mean, if you're like a high level parkour athlete, that money that comes in through Parkour UK isn't primarily for you. It's to grow the sport. So you need to get it into grassroots. You need to get it into schools. You need to finance coaching
Mhm.
courses. And then,
Certifications, so
yeah,
much overhead too that goes into all of these legal. I mean, I don't know if in the UK, but in the US, just working for a tech startup, seeing the insane amount of like legal overhead fees that go into just every piece of paper. You need to have it run by a legal counsel, then it needs to go to somebody else's legal, and all of a sudden you're like, I have paid $5,000 for 3 different lawyers to look over 2 sheets of paper. Like, it's
Yeah,
insane.
exactly. So so we did do a bit of a rebrand. We got a new website. We came up. So we had a new CEO, Sam. I think a year before I left. He's brilliant. Like honestly, they're doing such a good job with the means that they're having, and I have no doubt that it will grow and they will get partners on board. Because right now, I don't think there's any sponsorship. Like there's no commercial sponsorship. There's
Hmm.
in England, it's National Lottery, and then Sport England, but I think it will come, but it will manifest differently to what parkour athletes think it should. But I do believe they will be on board once they understand where growth is actually going to come from, because growth is not going to come from the elite athletes. And Parkour UK does support athletes. I mean, they did the Bristol projects with
Hmm.
Andrew. I can't remember who else was in it. Berkey. Um,
Yeah.
Stanny was
Yeah,
in there.
that's a good
There's
one. Stanny.
obviously, like, yeah, but that is a tiny bit of money that goes to those athletes then for that amount. And I think there was talks as well to have like a talent pathway, which exists in other sports, where you actually endorse an athlete that is promising, and they will get paid monthly. But that is for the future. So anyone who's a professional athlete right now would probably not be
Yeah.
able to touch that. The same way professional parkour athletes right now are not going to go to the Olympics because their time will have passed by the time they're going to.
Correct. Yeah, being a
So
professional athlete now is great because you get all of the name recognition of being a professional in quotations, with none of the actual benefits of being a professional
yeah,
in terms of financing. It's funny that you say that, oh, it wouldn't go to somebody like Ed Scott because he's a professional, but realistically, he's not a professional in any meaningful sense of the word, in the way that you would think for a football player or
yeah.
somebody else
No,
who's
you're not paid by a league.
regularly
Yeah,
competing and making a living from sponsorships. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty much. I mean, obviously in parkour, you're not paid by the league or the club. You are you're a freelancer, and it's comparable to being a model. You just
Yeah.
being used. I mean, some people obviously have sponsorships, and that's very lucky. But even sponsorships in parkour only get you that far. I mean, I think my deal with X Dubai was really good at the time, but it wouldn't have been enough to just live off that and also save
Hmm.
for the future. It's like pretty much you get the money and you spend it on life at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's still pretty much the case, although some people do very well in parkour. But again, it is also there's a limit to it, because at some point you won't have that sponsorship or you won't get booked on jobs because you're now not in your 20s anymore. And maybe it will be very trendy to be in your 30s and 40s, but it's not going to be the norm. It's still going to be just here and there.
Yeah.
So with Parkour
I'm
UK,
waiting to
obviously,
cash in on Silver Fox parkour. I'm gonna like wait until my hair goes gray. Max Cave's early on it. He's lucky. He's ahead
yeah.
of the game on the Silver Fox parkour.
To be fair, how do you think it does change? I think we were probably the generation that were luckiest with when we were starting. So when we were in our early 20s, it became a thing and brands actually wanted to work with parkour athletes, um, and you'd get booked on jobs. I think as a woman, you were even luckier because, wow, a woman doing parkour, that's very edgy, and a brand
Hmm.
wants to associate with that. So then it was quite easy for women to get booked on jobs. Obviously, you have to be in the right place, you have to look a certain way, like there's all those boxes you have to tick.
Mm.
But then as you get older, because I thought, well, once I hit my 30s, that's probably it. But brands kind of move with that because now they want someone a bit older who does parkour. I mean, there's briefs where someone's looking for someone in their 40s who's doing parkour, like acrobatics. So I
Yeah.
think that's a shift, but I don't think you can bet on actually just making a living from that. You'd have
Unless
to
you look like Seb
speak
Fukan in your
aliens.
40s and 50s and you just stay
Yeah.
chiseled as a Greek god. Well, I one thing that I did want to ask you also about is, obviously maybe people don't know, but your undergraduate education, was that in gender studies? Is
So
that,
that was
or am I making that up?
So that was a master's. So I did my undergrad in
Masters.
politics, and then added sociology onto it. And then because I wanted to stay in Innsbruck, so I studied in Innsbruck. I did politics and sociology, and then I wanted to do my master's in international politics, but they didn't offer that year. So instead of moving somewhere else, I just thought, well, I'm just going to see what else they have, and they had gender studies. So it was called Gender, Culture, and Social Change, which I didn't like to begin with because it's very frustrating. It's obviously a topic that is, to me, it was quite emotional because you're now constantly thinking about how unequal the world actually is and how it's reinforced, and there's nothing you really can do about
Mm.
it. Um,
Much better than international politics, which is known for its equity around
for
the
being
world. Yeah.
great, I think that's more like a if you study that, I think people take it a little bit more seriously. Well, if you do something like gender studies, it's an opinion. So you
Hmm.
debate with people and they have their opinions, like, but your opinion is a bit wrong because obviously
Mm.
studies like our social studies don't count for all that much in the general public because everyone can have an
Yeah.
opinion. So that's a
Yeah, it
that's a
is
tricky.
seen as much more subjective. Yeah.
And if you now I don't mind it, but if you're in your early 20s, then you might not have the ability to detach from that. You get really emotional about it. Um, but yeah, I ended up really enjoying it. So
Yeah. What I wanted to bring that up because you were talking about your experience being a woman in parkour early on, having an ease of access, a little bit of ease of access doing jobs. And I think that that was true if for the women who are able to get through the massive initial um,
it,
inertial challenge of breaking into the sport and developing their skill, they then found that they were in a very small pool of incredibly talented women who had the willpower to like practice the first 5 years with nothing, like very minimal support from the community. But you were also, I think, to me, I think there are a few initial voices. I think of like Julie Angel, Fizz, Shirley, some of the early women in the parkour scene who helped establish a template for what, how women could engage in the parkour community. But I think you were really pivotal in the sort of competitive era of parkour. So your voice, I remember particularly the whole conversation around equal pay in competition. Should that be important? I feel like you obviously helped push that forward a ton and being at the competitions in person. What has it been like to go from, what did you see then to maybe people don't know that you were a photographer on Gatecrasher, taking some of the sickest photos that we have since used to help promote it. So, how has from a perspective of being very educated on all of the sociopolitical underpinnings that go into something like why do women deserve equal pay in a sport and is that actually important? Not just coming at it from a bro science, I'm going to look at the Instagram views perspective, but how have you seen the community develop? And would you mind telling us a little bit about what your perspective was then to now?
um, you mean then in my early 20s to now, kind
Yeah,
of.
maybe if you want to just kind of describe like where it was at, and a little bit of the why you felt like that struggle or that conversation was so important to have then.
I think it was really important then because, and it still is now, don't get me wrong, it still is very, very important, and we're far from where things should be. But back then, the sport was really new, and all the loudest and most powerful voices were men who were also still young. So they were not very, like, they didn't really reflect on inequalities. And yeah, it's very easy to say, well, women shouldn't be getting. I remember this was the biggest argument always was women shouldn't be getting the same amount of money because there isn't as many women. So the pool of talent is smaller, so it's easier to be competitive. Hence, you don't deserve as much. Also, that wasn't said as out loud as much. I think Tom Coppola said it once and got called out for it, rightly so. But it's quite good when people are actually honest and say it. But I think he said in a
Mhm.
podcast, it's just not as interesting to watch. And I agree to some extent. Obviously, it's more exciting to see Joe Hando in his prime do a speed course than seeing a woman at the same time. Now, I think the game has completely changed because there's so many more women that really pushed the limits. But back then, I was probably one of the fast athletes, and I'm really not that fast. So I agree. It's more exciting to see Joe do a speed course than to see me scramble, do the same route. Um, but it was mostly because there's less women. My argument back then always was, if you don't pay women now, you don't give them incentives and you don't make them feel like they belong here, so they won't come. And then you create a bigger gap. So we'll actually go into a sport that will be very male dominated. Not necessarily because, and again, parkour is a sport that it reinforces, as a boy, you can reinforce your boyhood and your manlyhood
Mhm.
with parkour because it's strength, it's power, it's aggressive, it's outdoors. That's not for women. For women, you actually go against all of what it means to be a woman in, like, obviously not actually what it means to be a woman, but in the everyday conversation and like the
Mhm.
stereotypes. So you will create even a bigger barrier for women, and you will make it a sport that is exclusive to men. You're never going to create equality. And I think for most men back then, they wanted more women in the sport. They wanted it to be equal. And maybe that's me being optimistic, and that's me be like giving them
No, I
way.
think that's true. I think it was not always maybe necessarily for equitable reasons. I think it was maybe some people just wanted to have a girlfriend that did parkour also. But I do think for some for very good reasons, some for potentially not so good reasons. I do think that
Yeah.
everybody
And I
wanted to
think a
see
lot of
more
people
female
also just
participation.
didn't really care. Like a lot of people didn't really care, so didn't put effort in. But people who actually are in positions where they could make like could had made a choice. I don't think they were necessarily against women. They just thought we'd do it when the time is right. And
Mhm.
not to forget that most parkour like organizations didn't have that much money. But then again, they say, well, we don't have much money. It doesn't matter how much money you have, split it, but like split it in two. One for the male
Mhm.
category, one for the female category. It doesn't matter if it's £100 each. It's the no one's going to get rich doing a competition in parkour. Even if you win 2 grand, yes, that's a lot of money for some people, but is it actually going to make a difference in the long run compared to what we are creating, what future we're creating for the sport? So I think
Yeah.
the conversation back then was quite hard to have because there was also not that many women that were vocal about it. Um, because again, I think quite a few women didn't really care b- because if you make money from it, you're like, well, I'm actually all right. Why would I be why would I get into an argument with the community or into this debate? So I do think there wasn't that many women that were allowed, and now there's quite a few women that, first of all, proved everyone wrong because women are really exciting to watch in parkour, in competition, and just like, I mean, there's a reason why brands, and it's not just because women are more exciting to watch in parkour, but brands do sponsor female athletes in parkour maybe more than male athletes, I want to say. I can think of more women that have big
Yeah.
sponsorships. And that is also
Certainly proportionally the fact that
yeah,
Hazal, Lilu, Noah, yeah.
exactly. So there's a lot of women that actually do quite well. Um, so I think that argument doesn't really hold as much. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, now I've lost my
You're
trail of
good. I
thought.
wanted to hold you on one thing, which is I forget which podcast or where kind of I'd heard someone talking about this, but you brought this up, and it might have been something that you had shared that parkour as a practice visually and sort of the underlying message or philosophy of the practice reinforces masculinity. So if you are a 14-year-old boy going into it, the message is about strength, overcoming adversity and challenge. It's very like assert your will against the environment and others. And for women, it's still appealing, but it is a countercultural message. So it's going to appeal to women who are not looking to reinforce their identity of womanhood, but rather who want to sort of reject whatever this like societal perspective of womanhood is, in the same way that skateboarding for a long time has been like that. Um, would you mind just kind of talking a little bit more about that? Because I do think that's a really powerful thing to articulate.
Yeah, I think not necessarily that women who do parkour go against what it like. I have a lack of vocabulary vocabulary right now, but
Clearly, I do too, so that's why I was like, "I'm gonna shove this off to Lynn and let her talk about it before I accidentally get
well,
clipped in a bad
I
way."
can have the excuse that I'm not English native, so but no, what I
Yeah.
mean is, like, if you I didn't go into parkour thinking I wanna do this because I don't wanna reinforce my feminine, like, side.
Yeah.
I very much adhere to all of that, and still do, although I'm very critical of everything, but at no point did I think, I wanna portray myself as androgynous or step away
Mhm.
from the gender debate or everything, but I just thought it was really fun. And I think then when I started parkour, only then did I realize, "Oh, this is not seen as girly. This is seen as, oh, she's rebellious, she's edgy, she's different." I mean, the assumption that I'm gay has been made so many times purely because I do parkour, which, I mean, doesn't bother me, but it's just really interesting because, yeah, you send a message to the world when you do parkour as a woman that you don't necessarily want to send, or it's not intended. It's just it comes with that. It's, well, clearly you don't care about your nails. I remember some comments that I got when I was quite young in parkour where the worst probably that I've got, and it sounds very trivial. It doesn't sound worse at all, bad at all. But I was at a jam and there was this. I don't want to say older guy, but he was probably end 20s, early 30s, and I was swinging on bars, and I think I got blisters. And then he made a comment around, "What does your boyfriend think about your hands being this rough?" And I was just shocked because I was like, "What? Like,
Oh,
who
man.
even comes up with this?" So I think that's when you then realize, "Oh, okay, this is something that people would talk about." It be, I mean, my mom, obviously, my mom is quite
Yeah.
traditional in her,
Traditional.
yeah, in her. It's not a sport for girls, but that wasn't just parkour. That was, I mean, I did gymnastics as a kid. Then I stopped when I was fairly young, like 11-ish, I think.
Mhm.
Wanted to do basketball. My mom said, "Oh, it's not good for your ankles." Wanted to do boxing purely because my sister's boyfriend at the time
She
was
might have
into
been right
boxing.
about basketball not being good for your ankles, so to be
Yeah, but
fair.
then I thought that I was doing ballet, which arguably being on
Yeah,
point shoots, like, would be
absolutely.
a lot worse. But that was
Yeah.
fine. But basketball, boxing wasn't fine. Then obviously I did ballet for a very long time, and I absolutely loved it. So it's not like she robbed me from all the fun experiences, but she definitely put me in the direction of, well, this is a sport for girls, and you're really good at it, and you should pursue this. When I started doing parkour, I don't think she took it too seriously until I started training outside and getting injuries. And then at first it was, this is not a sport for girls, and then it was, you're too old for this, which
Mm.
changed the narrative a little bit because she was probably thinking, she doesn't listen to me saying it's not for girls. Um, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
again, I lost my train of thought, but I do think now we have a lot more women in parkour that show such a different spectrum of what it means to be a woman in parkour and outside of parkour. I mean, we have quite a few videos of um, women, like girls and women, do parkour in dresses and having their nails done and having their makeup done. And although
Mhm.
that's not me, I absolutely love to see it because it just defies all those like stereotypes that exist around. And I think it was true for a long time that a lot of women in parkour thought, I have to dress the same way as the guys to fit in. I can't be wearing makeup. I remember someone mentioning, I can't remember who it was, that she got bullied for wearing makeup going to parkour classes. So that's quite sad because it's obviously going to now keep someone from going to a parkour class. But I do think that has changed. I don't think it's very equal between, I don't know what the prize pots now are for competitions. I think a lot of them, grassroots
I
especially,
think
have
every
the same.
yeah, at least at last year, I think everyone I don't know about Fig, because I just don't pay attention enough, but I'm pretty certain every grassroots parkour competition had equal prize money for across events, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think even Fig had, I mean, they definitely started off having the same prize pot.
They
I
might
don't know if
have to
but
because IOC rules, yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
I really appreciate you bringing up the point about the, um, language around that too, because I think that, like, Noah is a great example of somebody who she's always, I think, been very, like, I'm going to wear makeup and dress how I dress and be girly and more feminine, and then has kind of taken to sharing that more explicitly in like reels where it's like literally like I'm a girl, also I do this. And I know like Renee way back in the day, I think was the first person that I remember doing parkour in a dress and talking about
Yeah.
like it's so funny how we, we'll talk about Foskey's baggy sweatpants looking cool. Like let's see what kind of shapes other clothes can make. And I think that yeah, there's definitely such a wide representation from Lilu, who is just wearing like high fashion outfits doing
Yeah.
parkour,
She's
to
my hero
Miranda
when
Tibbling, to Oh my gosh, yeah, Lilu's amazing. I mean,
yeah.
she was I think the second guest that we had on because as soon as I did this, I'm like, I wanted to hear Lilu just talk about art and her vision for how she creates things because she's so, I think, focused and disciplined and conscious of how she presents everything that she makes. And I think people look at her success and kind of underplay how uh not lucky it was, how much
No,
hard
no,
work she
no, no,
puts into
she's
everything.
very smart. Like Lido,
Yeah.
like probably because she loves doing what she does, but from a commercial standpoint, is very smart. And I mean, in fact, I did put her forward for to a client who was looking to sponsor, like to go more into like action sports. I was like, Lido is just the perfect person to sponsor because everything she does makes so much sense and it's
Mhm.
thought through and it's authentic as well. I hate the word authentic because I mean that's overused, but it's so her. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think she's one of a kind in that sense. In parkour, at least, there's other athletes in other sports that are similar. But yeah, she definitely brings some magic to parkour that wasn't there before.
She has a very organic brand. Like, you can look at everything that she has is it feels very it does not feel, yeah. I mean, it is authentic, but not in the corporate sense of, "We wanna make it something that's authentic to our brand." You're like, "No, Lilu is just herself, and that is her brand, and her
And the best
creativity just comes out of her pores."
Yeah, and sometimes you can see brands teaming up with her, and you can actually tell that they've let her do her thing, and it
Yeah.
shows, and it's amazing. And then sometimes she teams up with a brand, and you're like, "Oh, they did try and orchestrate this a bit too much," and it didn't work just because she is so special. For other people, it'd be better to actually have the brand be like, "Okay, we're gonna do this, this, and this," and that is gonna work well. But with someone like Lilu, you need to work with her for her not just the skills that she has in parkour, but just the person that she created to the, like, online audience.
Yeah. I do wanna ask you a little bit about messaging and sponsorship, but before we get off of our, how the scene has changed, I do wanna go back to kinda the gay crasher situation because when Renee and Lisa were talking to me about that, I think they really wanted to lean into the, like, counter-cultural aspect of parkour, but simultaneously, I remember when I got to Budapest and I was on set with them and we're shooting, they were like, "Oh, make sure we're getting B-roll of Lulu doing her nails. Oh, make sure, like, we're getting, you know, putting on makeup before we go to our session," so that it's like both of these things can exist in the same community, in the same person. What was your experience like being there for that first 10 days or so, taking pictures?
So I was only there for, I think, 3 or 4 days. It was very, very short.
Okay.
Um, it was, I have to say, it was chaotic in terms of having, I don't know,
Yeah.
10 women of different ages and slightly different ideas of how this should be shot. Different to, because 'cause I've been obviously with Storm and having traveled around with Motors projects quite a lot when I was younger.
Yeah.
it, I was usually the only woman, and there's arguments of how something should be done, but they play out in a very different way than when
Mhm.
there's a group of women. So that was interesting because obviously I've only known that from being with my siblings. So I have two sisters, and it's that same kind of dynamic. And seeing that in the sports area or the sports world of parkour, where I hadn't experienced it, was interesting. And I do agree that sometimes women might be their worst enemies. Um, so some of it I was like, okay, this
Also
probably
in production in general, I will say that if you don't have I know for Renee and Lisa, it was their first time directing producing
Yeah.
on set, and obviously Hannah was there. Keelan, I think, was probably there when you were there, and Dennis. But I felt the same with Dennis. Like we talked about, like we didn't want to be the guys stepping in to try and provide like another perspective. And on a set, it is always hierarchical for a reason, because to
Yeah.
execute a uniform vision, like there does need to be an agreement that at the end of the day, if this is how the director wants it to be, this is how it's going to be. And that's hard in parkour, because I've experienced that with everything from Queen City, which was all women other than myself, to working with Davis or working with Jared Ludi, or groups of a bunch of men. You're like, you guys are my friends. I'm gonna try and make it as consensual as possible. And then you get to a point you're like, all right, it's like
Yeah.
trying to decide where to eat after a jam. We're just gonna go get wings here. We're leaving in 3 minutes. Get your backpack. Like,
I think my experience was, I mean, it was amazing, and the end result obviously was great. But I think it was Lisa and Renee who were leading the whole thing. Obviously, they had fundraised, they took the lead, and they did an
mhm.
incredible job. But they weren't on the same page in terms of what they wanted the end result to be. I think Lisa wanted, if I remember correctly, and hopefully I don't butcher this or spread anything that isn't true, but Lisa wanted it to be more reflective of the community, while Renee had a bit more of a commercial brain to it, where and the end goal really was to get sponsorship. Like, they wanted to make this profitable, they wanted to get brands to be interested. So Renee and Lisa had these, the end goal was the same, but how to get there was a different way. While
Yeah.
I remember talking to Lisa, kind of siding with Renee, saying, well, if I'm a brand, I'm not going to invest in a video where people are damaging private property, for example. You have to be smart about that. You
Yeah.
obviously can show parkour in a very genuine way of how we actually train, but there's a line between being coming across as reckless and coming across as, okay, I'm actually here, I'm professional, and I'm, I'm serious about this. I think there's two different approaches, and they're both valid.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you want to get brands on board, then you're more likely to be lucky going the slightly safer route. And I just remember I did I needed talent for a job in Dubai, and I asked people in Brighton to send show reels and just be like, okay, because there was, I think they needed, I don't know, 15 people, so it was quite a big group. So
Mhm.
I reached out to people and I was like, oh, could you send me your show reels and descriptions? And one of the guys' video started with him sitting on a wall drinking beer and smoking a joint, and I was like, this is going to a client. I mean,
Yeah. I'm
no
not even
one
gonna
can.
forward this one, because
Yeah,
it's now
exactly. I
gonna
was like,
make me look bad as the talent director scout.
yeah. So I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not. I can't put this forward. But I'm like, obviously, if people are young, they might not think that, and they might think, oh, that this is like, I don't know, this is genuine and it's cool and
Yeah.
edgy. But I'm like, your
Bruv, it's
brand.
part of my brand, bruv. I gotta sit
Yeah,
and smoke my
exactly.
zoot, bruv.
Or maybe just too lazy to cut it out. I don't know, but yeah, it's kind of like you have to obviously, if you're working with brands now, you have to be quite smart about how you present yourself, and that doesn't mean you
Mhm.
have to be anything that you're not. It just means that maybe you have to tone down certain things that brands might not enjoy so much. Um, so I think that was the main. I don't want to say issue, but that was kind of a barrier filming for Gatecrasher, because they weren't on the same page. And I do agree, the hierarchies exist for a reason. That said, I do want to think that when women work together, usually it is more collaborative. But I just think you need to have the same direction, and then everything
Mhm.
else can be like discussed, and you can, I don't know, compromise. But
Yeah.
you need to know, okay, this is the overarching goal, and this is overarching what we want to do and how we're going to get there. So that was
Mhm.
a little bit lacking. I do really love how it turned out and
I was
how
gonna
people
say,
reacted
ironically,
afterwards.
yeah, I think the conflict, the occasional like conflict, like the having Lisa and Renee both advocate for slightly different ends of the spectrum when it came to presentation, maybe it benefited the end result in the hands of Toby, because he's such a phenomenal editor. It's like that we ended up getting so much footage that it kind of did do both of those things, particularly when you have so many athletes. Like, you got the chance to see certain athletes like Lilu or Renee or Hazal, I think, have these more kind of um narrative and like character driven moments, and then other athletes like Rachel came off a little bit more as like street and brought that like gritty authenticity to the project. And I will say that it is to my knowledge the most viewed non-vlog parkour video, I think, in the last 7 years. So
Oh,
for all of the people who were
that's amazing.
complaining, this is almost 500,000 views now. So for all of the people who were complaining about, during the fundraiser, well, 35,000 euros, that's insane. First of all, I ended up paying for two hostels or two Airbnbs because we ran out of money uh, in
Yeah.
Budapest, out
Again,
of
such
pocket.
not
So the
that much.
budget goes quickly. Everybody was like, what's going on? And it was wild because Renee and Lisa, as you probably know, by the end especially, like, we were going to the grocery and it was okay, there's a 30 euro budget to buy groceries for 10 people. And then it was like 3 hours of me, Renee, Dennis, and a few other people like Louisa taking shifts, like cooking dinner for everybody because we couldn't afford to go eat out. And it was just like, okay, we need to make enough food on 30 euros a day that 10 people can have this, and then leftover rice and chicken and green beans for lunch or whatever. Um, but it also goes to show that, as you know, as a strategist, I think plenty of brands, if you said, hey, we're going to have a 35,000 euro budget and you're going to get um, probably a social media reach of like 15 million total views and 500,000 organic unpaid views on YouTube, that would be an insane return on investment for like any campaign. So yeah, I'm very
I
happy with
didn't know it
that.
had that many views. I mean, that is incredible. I remember with Parkour UK because we put some money towards it, because we were making an effort to sponsor, or like
Hmm.
to put money towards female-led projects, but we struggled to use we couldn't promote the whole video because some of it was damaging property. I think the
Yeah.
beginning clip maybe might have been with Rachel doing a lache and one of the tiles
Yeah.
broke. I mean, it wasn't private property, but obviously as like an NGB, you can't put money behind something like that. And we should have been more clear at the time because I was working for Park UK and I really strongly advocated to put money towards it. And they also at Park UK paid for me to go there and take photos. Um, then it became then it became oh, my boyfriend just comes in. Then it became a little bit harder to now promote it because obviously you're like, well, we put money behind this, but we should have had a little bit more of a discussion beforehand what it
Yeah.
can and cannot be. But yeah, I'm glad it did so well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm having USBK and I were trying to plan a film for the fall, which I won't go into detail about until it gets totally done. But it's the same thing where we had a chat with the whole USBK board where Sean and I, Point A, were kind of like, okay, what if you guys, help us by providing us with, tax exempt status so that we can take in donations from sponsors, etc. Like what can we show? Obviously, we're not going to glorify property damage, but if somebody breaks a wall and it's as part of a narrative, are you okay with that happening? If it's like people are having a shot of tequila after as like a celebratory thing, but it's not celebrating alcoholism. Like, at what point, like, having those conversations in advance is really important so that you're not taking money or something and then all of a sudden you end up in a spot where you're turning in a product that they can't use.
Yeah, I think that was a learning curve for me because when I saw the end result, then I was like, "Oh, I should have thought about that beforehand, and I should actually
Yeah.
put that should have been in a brief being like, this cannot happen." But, obviously also, if you're supporting a woman that project like that, you kind of just wanna support it and because you don't wanna say, "Oh, you can do this, but you can't do that." And also there was no brand involvement. Obviously, if there's brand involvement,
Yeah.
then it's a lot stricter because obviously there's a lot more, on the line.
Hmm. Yeah, then you just have to have that little like social media release that says Parkour UK does not condone any destructive or reckless behavior as portrayed in the following video.
Yeah.
Well, that's maybe a great place where we can kind of transition to the last question and wrap back around to your work that you're doing now. So you're getting to see sort of the behind the scenes of what brands are looking for and how they engage with different sports and athletes. And I'm curious, without divulging any state secrets, what do you What sort of trends do you see in the stories and takes and perspectives that brands are trying to relay through their relationship with sport?
It's a really hard one because a lot of the brands we work with will sponsor like a league or and it's a bit different to sponsoring athletes. I think if you're looking at brands being interested in sponsoring individual athletes, I would say the trend is probably to connect to a younger audience that they cannot reach through more
Mhm.
traditional sports or traditional outlets. I'd be lying if I said,
Uh,
"Oh, there's a clear trend and I can point this out." But normally, like one of the things that is a red thread that goes through everything is young people. Is connecting
yeah.
sports to young people, and that might be because, I mean, pretty much any brief we get in has a section, at least a section of Gen Z, which
Mhm.
I don't like using that word, like those generational like types, anyways. But
Mhm.
it's belief. Well, the belief is brand belief is that young people do not follow sports as much, which I don't think is true. I think it's just followed in a different way, and
Yeah.
watching sports costs a lot of money. If you go to live events, that costs a ton of money. Even if you watch it on TV, you have to have a license. So
Mhm.
obviously, for someone who's 20 and doesn't want to or can't spend that money, they will just watch the highlights and
Yeah.
just watch somewhere else. Like,
Yeah. They look it up on X what the result was of the game, and then they go on Instagram and watch a clip. I'm a big baseball fan, which nobody outside of the US and South Central America probably cares about, or Japan. But recently the MLB has done a bunch of streaming um Major League Baseball has done a bunch of streaming deals, and this year they calculated it will cost somebody $1,000 in annually to have memberships to be able to watch every MLB game for their favorite team, because it's like you need an Amazon membership to watch 15 of the games, you need a Netflix membership for 10 of the games, you need a Fox membership for 5 of the and yeah, I talked to my parents who have cable TV, and they're like, "Did you watch the game?" And nope, I just went on Instagram and watched the 3 highlights and checked the score, and that is how I'm gonna engage, because it's
yeah,
like 60% is satisfying and cost me nothing.
yeah, and also a lot of a lot of younger people now consume it, and I think younger. I think that stretches probably to mid 30s, 40s, even. You follow individual
Thank
athletes.
you, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I'm like, I don't think it's like, oh, anyone
Treat
between
yourself, Lynn. Treat
oh,
yourself.
I'm technically 7, so I'm s like, yeah, I'm stretching that out as the older I get. But I do think you follow individual athletes now because you obviously get, I mean, Ilona Maher is one of the best examples who's brought so many eyes to rugby because of how she built her brand, and a lot of people would follow her, but they don't watch rugby, but they still be involved
Mhm.
in rugby. They still know some of the brands that are in the rugby space because of her. So
Yeah.
it's the way you follow sports and engage with it is slightly different than what it used to be because you can. I don't think because people have changed how they watch it, but that wasn't possible. You couldn't have followed an athlete that closely 30 years ago
Yeah.
because they weren't on a platform on social media that you could follow easily.
Yeah. So maybe a better framing of this question to wrap up would be, um, for somebody like Lilu who maybe does it already, but an athlete specifically who's trying to look at the broad landscape of sport and sponsorship and wants to position themselves well to be appealing to a potential brand sponsor, what do you think that athlete could focus on
Hmm. I think it
in
depends a little
parkour?
bit who you wanna, so if I think about parkour athletes, who you wanna
If you're
depends on.
not Dom and you can't survive a 10-meter falls regularly without severe injury, let's say.
Mm, he'll put me on the spot. I think put out content that is something you could identify with that also is distinct. If you
Mm.
produce something that just blends in with what everyone else is doing, regardless of how good it is, it won't be picked up as much as, I mean,
God,
video is an
I just
example.
wanna stop you there and clap, because I think that that is the message when people go, "Well, why doesn't this person just did this amazing double Kong?" And, people have been consuming parkour content for almost 20 years now, the average person cannot differentiate between a 2 meter double Kong at IMAX and a 3.5 meter double Kong in central London. They just go, oh, cool thing, cool thing. And I think what you just said of making content that differentiates you in the space, even if it's not as movement centric or isn't the craziest thing, is something that's worth just
Yeah.
quickly interrupting you for. Sorry.
Well, you interrupted me on my main thought. I think that was the main. I think, yeah, you have to do something that is distinct, that stands out, and it can be super simple. Like, I mean, some of the pages, I saw a page the other day of a guy who is a bartender in London, and all he does is film himself bartending. And I went down this rabbit hole of just watching videos, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm watching, but he's found a weird niche of fashion and bartending in London in a nightclub. Super odd, super distinct. No one else is doing it. So, not saying that that's what parkour people should do, but it's just something that if I think of Lilu, I have a picture in my head of her like kind of levitating and having like a nice fashion dress on, and it's stylized. That stands out to any other parkour content. And I think most people who are successful have that. And it can literally be something that is just inherently you. Hazal has a really cute accent when she speaks English. She does her vlogs in English. That stands out. It stands out that she has a particular accent and she does vlogging. You pick up on it. You hear her voice and you know, well, that's Hazal. Those are the little bits I think that stand, and that has nothing to do with her parkour whatsoever. And
Mhm.
no one can just put on an accent and pretend that it's them, but it's those little things. So you have to find that. And then I think be consistent with it as well, because that will, you build memory structures in someone's brain. If you consistently put out distinctive like content, someone will have that memory that is easily accessible. And I think that makes you an interesting like asset for a brand, because obviously they can now leverage that because you have built that for yourself. I think
Mhm.
that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but
That was
yeah, be
great.
consistent and be very distinct, and also do something that you actually
Yeah.
enjoy doing. Because if you do something you don't enjoy doing, then it's going to be really hard to keep that up.
Yeah.
I think
That is
that's
great.
it.
I do feel like the personality first. I think of it as personality first content, and like personally for me, I realize that I'm frustratingly optimistic, and that is just like I am a golden retriever, and anytime that I try to make things that are not that, I realize that that is just who I am as a person. Take it or leave it, and when it comes to making content, you're like, you just have to embrace whatever those things are about yourself that you're like, maybe people will be annoyed by this eventually, but that it won't annoy me.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the ones that don't like it, they just won't stay. But then you get a
Yeah.
group of people who do like it. And I think for brands, I mean, I'm not so much in the creator stuff. We don't do that many
Hmm.
like campaigns where we might team up with creators, but I'm not that involved in it. But obviously, a brand will, if they do a good job, they will team up with someone that fits the brand. So not just someone that has. I mean, there's so many brands that wouldn't be the right fit for Lilu. Well, a lot of brands would be the right fit. So they need to know that, but then also just leverage what Lulu has built for herself. Um, and if you can demonstrate that to a brand, which is not an easy thing to do, and for some people it's a lot easier because they're just more natural in content making or in front of the camera, or have more, like, I mean, it's enough to be picked up by one or two brands and then you get a bit of momentum,
Hmm.
which for someone like Lilo, she has so much momentum. I'm pretty sure she gets a lot of requests from brands. That is easier to do once you've worked with a few brands, I think. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. Always my final question, which I'm very curious because you recommended to me a fantastic read and introduced me to Simone de Beauvoir, and I think you recommended The Second Sex to me. And her Ethics of Ambiguity is one of my all-time favorite philosophy reads. Fantastic. But I always like to ask, do you have, or if you had to recommend one piece of media, could be a book, a podcast, a film, anything, to the audience, what
um,
would it be?
Oh god,
And it
this
can
is my
just be whatever pops into your head first, so don't go too crazy racking your brain.
this is my favorite book. It's called The Five People You Meet in Heaven. I think the author is Mitch Albom. It's a very easy, very nice read, but yeah, it has so many truths in it and so many takeaways to like pretty mu no, I don't wanna give anything away actually. I'm just gonna say, yeah, that's my favorite book, one of my favorite books and has been for a long time that I will
Great.
happily read, so that would be that one.
Great read. You also recommended to me years ago The Age of Silence, I think, or is it The Age of Silence or it's
No,
early,
it's
maybe it's just Silence, Erling Kaga, the
yeah,
Norwegian.
yeah, that's brilliant.
Fantastic,
You did
fantastic book.
recommend, The Inner Game of Tennis, which I have intended to reread because I remember it being such a good book, but then I can't actually remember much of it, so I'll have to reread it, but I
Yeah.
remember you gave that to
Yeah,
me.
our other one that I would recommend to you if you've never read it is Finite and Infinite Games by James Carse. Callum quotes it in his What is Parkour book, and ironically, James Carse is also the grandfather of a parkour athlete in Washington D.C., a really good friend of mine, Sam Blattner, who his entire family are philosophers, and his grandpa James Carse was a chair of philosophy at NYU and wrote that book.
Crazy,
So
you have to say that because I forget, but yeah, Cam's book, I got it here, it's my commute book at the moment, which I am really enjoying. It's been, I mean, I have so much still to read, but yeah, it's been really good.
yeah. Well, thank you, Lynn, so much for taking the time to do this. It's great to
Good
catch
for
up
me to
to you
talk to
or
you,
with you too.
and hopefully see you guys soon this side of the pond, that'd be
Fingers
great.
crossed. That was Lynn Jung. Thank you guys so much for listening. Really appreciate, as always, Lynn's perspective. She is one of the most thoughtful and grounded and educated societal thinkers, I think, in the parkour space. I mean, we talked about her education, and I think that the lens that she views parkour and its various interactions with the world around it not only has informed her new job, but I think it's really, really helpful to hear her perspective from that context and apply it now, whether it's in terms of gender, whether it's in terms of content and how we present ourselves and the narratives that we're sharing with the rest of the world. I think Lynn's perspective is so valuable. And I really appreciated having her on. I also could not recommend enough checking out her suggestions for books. Silence in the Age of Noise, which I had to look up the actual title after I butchered it in the podcast, is something that I reread probably every year or 6 months even. It's a great book. It's like 100 pages. Just sit down with a cup of coffee, put your phone away, relax, and read it. It is fantastic. And all of her other recommendations that she's ever shared with me were fantastic. So, yeah, definitely this is one of those episodes that I would say don't skip out on the media that she recommends and just digest everything that she said. I think, again, her perspective from gender to the experience of sport, recovery, practice, and then sharing that narrative is all so, so valuable. It was great to have Lynn's voice back in the community a bit and just to catch up with her through this podcast. And I really appreciate her taking the time to do that. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen. As always, thank you so much. I will catch you guys next week.